Ready to move to the next level in your product career? I'm Shobit from Intentional Product Manager. Join me as we discuss ways to help you stand out in your job search and your career so you can have more impact and make more money. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intentional Product Manager podcast. I'm your host, Shobit Chugh, and today we have someone whose resume reads like a playbook for world-class product leadership. So, Mick, my friend from business school, he's worked across Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, Airbnb, SoFi, and now is head of product for Gen AI monetization at Scale AI. Mick, first of all, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Shobit. It's been too long since business school. And between me and your Google experience, we do have a lot of the companies covered.
Exactly. So Mick is not just a leader in cutting edge AI products. He's also built startups, led growth at fintechs, brought structure to chaos at some of the biggest names in tech. So we'll jump into a whole bunch of different aspects with Mick. Let's start with some warm-up questions. You have obviously worked at all these different companies, big tech, startups, consulting. What's maybe one experience that fundamentally shaped how you think as a product leader?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for having me. I think there's a lot of pros and cons of having as many jobs as I have, different companies over the last decade and a half. But I'll say there's two things that I've learned that I think are very interesting out of this experience. So the first is when I was a very senior IC product manager at Facebook, now known as Meta. We were running our quarterly product review process. And the way you do that is at the beginning of a quarter, you present to the VP what the plan is. But in order to be ready for that meeting, you meet with each one of their direct reports individually, make sure you have their concerns addressed. Then you nominate one of them to pre-wire the actual exec, so you make sure the exec is on board, and then you can actually have the meeting. Which is fine. It's great. It's efficient. These execs are very important people, and their time is valuable. But I enjoy building and ideating a little more than what Shreyas would call product theater, which is choreographing that performance and making sure it works very well. Some examples of this, if you listen to Jeff Bezos, he'll talk about how the best ideas have a very like clean doc with a clean recommendation, but he's good with like messy meetings where people actually like talk about these ambiguous problems that have many potential levers, and like that's how to solve it. And so, that Facebook experience made me pivot to go to smaller companies like SoFi, Brex, and now Scale, where I feel like I still have to do a bunch of like stakeholder management and innovation, but it is on the balance. I'm spending a lot more time building than just managing stakeholders. The second and last thing I'll say is interesting is I think it's really it's really powerful to be look back at these companies and say like this is what their culture was, and that the like these certain like pros and cons, right? So an interest like for example, Netflix is a very metrics oriented company, and so you have a great quarter, you get promoted. You have a bad quarter, you get fired. Like there are implications coming from that. And look, you don't need great leaders to say you exceeded your revenue threshold. You need great leaders to say in this macro environment that was actually good. Meta is very relationship and metrics oriented, and so it's very important for the head of Eng, PM, and design all to get along very well, and they kind of like set each other's metrics and make them as achievable as possible. And then like say like you can tell me more about Google, but it feels like Google is much more about like being a self-starter and having like research breakthroughs, and that's why they're great at like long-term tech innovation, but maybe less so on the product front, though. They've been getting a lot better. But yeah, you probably know more about that than I do.
I mean, I appreciate the long-term thinking at Google more so than anything else, where like it was almost like not even interesting for anybody to know what I was working on over the next year until there was alignment on what could this mean 5 years from now. So I think that part was really, really important. Are we going somewhere that's meaningfully different?
Yeah, setting vision should be one of the most interesting parts of being a product manager, right? No execution, no feasibility, just like what is that like beautiful nirvana you want to get to at the end?
You mentioned all these different places. So what's maybe something that people get wrong about your journey when they look at your resume?
I think there's like one really big thing that I don't know if they get wrong, but I don't think they actually realize. I think when people look at my resume, they look at a lot of momentum. You're joining new companies, you're learning about new products. It's exciting. It's fun to be a generalist. All of that is true. But something I don't think I appreciated enough, even after going to business school with you, is how hard it is to like embed yourself in a new organization. And this is much harder the more senior you get. So just from like a human organizational development perspective, when you join a large company at a senior role, basically there's a lot of other people competing for the same sets of power, whether that's explicit or not. And you need to find a way to like get those first 6 months through to actually be successful. So let's say, Shobit, you're a great interviewer. You interview at all these companies and you join OpenAI tomorrow. Great. Like you did that based on your own skills, not any network. But day one at OpenAI, you have some skills, but you know zero about like the actual company and how they operate and all the research they've done. And you don't have any network to actually fall back upon. And in that kind of a situation, I think like I should acknowledge it's really important to have a really good manager to help set you up for success in those first 6 months. And then after that, you have the network and knowledge to kind of like manage your career yourself. But I don't think people appreciate how hard it is to actually ramp up in an organization. After the first couple of years, you can have big wins. You know exactly what to go build. It's a much easier process. And so the next time one of your listeners joins a new company, some advice I would have for them is diligence your manager and make like leverage them effectively. Second is create a group of peers who can review your ideas and give you feedback, especially if they've been at the company for a while. Map out incentives, figure out who the decision makers are. And definitely try and ship something within the first month there, both as a sign of like, yeah, I'm driving outcomes, but you also learn so much when you do the whole end-to-end development process, right? So, creating requirements is very different from doing visual QA and launching things and finding bugs. And the sooner you get through that entire cycle, you know what game you're playing faster.
I love it, especially that last lesson on, hey, can you like get through the entire life cycle as soon as possible? Because you'll discover things very quickly versus waiting and sort of holding back.
Exactly. And to do that early, you have to pick something very small. You're not going to ship like a 50-person product in that way, but that to your point, be intentional about that goal. Find something really small, make it end to end.
Totally. Let's do another fun one. Maybe like what product have you tried recently that delighted you?
Do you have Waymos available in Boston yet?
Not that I know of.
For folks who are in, I think San Francisco, Austin, Miami now have Waymo access. It is magical. I compare it to the first time I had good Wi-Fi on a plane. You're like, oh my God, this is magic. And then like a month later when the Wi-Fi isn't working, you're like, how can I live like this? Even though this was magic a month ago, Waymo kind of feels like that. I'll order a Waymo. It'll come over. I don't have to pay extra for having a pet in there. And then there's other things that I never even anticipated. So now that I'm in the Waymo, I can play my music at the volume that I want and not be inconveniencing anyone else. And so I think their entire like product just feels so magical and well done. It's also a very good product. They have 99% fewer accidents and stops than humans have. And it's also a product that is like continuing to get better and better over time. And so like a feature that didn't exist that now does is I'll sit in the Waymo, I'll start the ride, and I'll continue my Spotify playlist from where I dropped it off. You can also use Google Assistant to pick any song in the Google library and they'll go play it. And so, yeah, they've done a really good job with the user experience around Waymos. And as long as a Waymo is within 30% of the price of an Uber or Lyft, I will almost always pick the Waymo over them.
Yeah, I haven't yet managed to try, but now that you mentioned about Miami, I am going there end of the month, so I will give it a shot.
There's a lot of other cool things to do in Miami, but like hopefully the Waymo can get you there, yeah.
Okay, so now let's dig into some topics which are very relevant to your career. So there's a lot of discussion right now, obviously, about AI. In fact, I recently did an end of the year podcast and my podcast platform automatically picked out what was the word that was most used in the podcast. And it's literally people saying AI, 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 AI all the time.
Shobit Wrapped came back with AI as the catchphrase. Got it. Well, you're in sync with tech. It's not just you.
So when you look at where AI product management is headed, let's begin. What do product managers need to unlearn?
Very good question. So I'll say two things just to set context. The first is we are so lucky to be in tech and alive at this time, right? You can go back and read sci-fi from hundreds of years about artificial intelligence, and it's actually happening during our lifetimes. So if you're in tech and able to work adjacent to AI, I think you should have a lot of gratitude for that. Um, the second thing I'll say is like I don't think that AI specifically changes the job that much. I think it's a very valuable tool that can make things that took a long time before, much easier and quicker to do. Right. So, for example, let's say I'm managing the product. At Scale AI, which is used to pay our contributors across the world. So, for folks that don't know Scale AI, it's a two-sided marketplace. You have all your model makers on one side that need training data from Scale, and on the other side, we have like a million contributors, PhDs in Vietnam, STEM experts in Brazil, all working and annotating on these tasks. And so that's just a little bit about the company. And so when I manage the pay team, which pays out these million people across the globe, I look at all the tickets that came last year, and there's like 100,000 tickets. Well, I can now feed that into an LLM, and it'll tell me these are the three most common problems with no effort. And that would have been like, I don't know, a bunch of time in Excel wrangling at a minimum before. And so I would say like the PM job hasn't changed much. You just have like better tools at your disposal, but it's still on the PM to do three things. The first is pick the right problem. And when I say pick the right problem, I mean this is a problem that solves a major user concern, and it will make money, and you think that this is something that is aligned with their core competencies and you can differentiate with. So picking the right problem is probably the most important thing a PM can do. Second is like align the organization and rally the troops behind a vision. Very hard for AI to have that social touch and get people excited. And so I think both of those remain effectively unchanged. What is changing is probably like to your point, like as a PM, the scale, you can't do everything yourself. And so now you have two ways to solve that problem. One is you can delegate to people you trust, which was available before. But second, you can also have this AI tool that really speeds up a lot of things. It requires continuous investment, making sure that the AI has access to all the right information around your company. So when the time comes, like it has all that context, and you don't have to spend like 4 days building a digital twin. But I think like what PMs need to unlearn is, oh, there's this problem, I'm going to go solve it myself. Well, now you either delegate or give it to the AI, and you kind of own the evaluation process of, is this the right way to do it? Is this good? And idea generation has just become like cheaper and easier than it was before.
Very much so. And I love the fact that you began by saying fundamental job has not changed. I also loved how you talked about gratitude for this, because I see fear of AI and then I see this almost panic mode. Everything's changed and everything I've done is irrelevant so far. So I'm so glad you are mentioning those, Mick.
But I would also say, to your point, when things change a lot, if you believe you learn quickly, then that is an advantage to you, not a disadvantage to you. And so if you make the time for that, that con is more of a pro. But yeah, I totally agree with you.
What are some things that have changed? What role do product managers, should they play more that they currently aren't?
I'll start with, I think, the most basic and obvious feedback, which is eval-driven development. And so what I've learned at Scale, but I've also seen like Sierra, Decagon, other players do this, is before you build an agent or a tool, you actually have to build your eval set or your scorecard. And without your eval set and scorecard, you don't know if your training is making this better or worse. And yet this is very infrequently done. Like even large consulting organizations, whether it's PwC, Palantir, Sierra, Decagon, Scale, we don't always pursue eval-driven development, but I think that's like the number one thing to do, because otherwise you can't really show progress or know which way you're trending. So I think it's important for PMs to be plugged into that eval data generation process and make sure that the eval set actually aligns with their product vision, would probably be like the number one change. A much smaller change is, I'd say, like PM should always be like dogfooding the product and all the competitors' products. But I think it's even more important to do it now, because when you discover things that someone else is doing, your product development time has gotten like so much shorter that the ROI is very high. So I think PMs need to like continue dogfooding in their own product and competitor products, but they need to do that probably more than they were actually doing before.
I love that. And it's like further refinement and understanding of the basics, like dogfooding, such a basic thing, but like you actually now need to do more of that. Thank you for sharing that. So you're personally modeling competitive coding, you're testing throughput incentives at scale. What does that teach you about how PM should work with AI systems, and not just building them, but how they should work with them?
Good question. One of the experiences I had early at scale was being thrown onto a competitive coding queue called Aider. I didn't know this before, but there's a benchmark called Aider where they have like a bunch of really hard math problems that most models at the time couldn't solve. And so the Aider benchmark measured like, hey, can the computer solve it? No. If you give the computer a second chance to solve it with the outputs from the first chance, then can it solve it? So that's called pass at two because it got two opportunities. Then great. If it fails at pass at two, then you failed at the Aider benchmark, which is just an interesting way to think about how to evaluate things. And I'm very glad I got to work on that. And that queue taught me a lot. The first thing is like I actually signed up as a contributor on the Aider queue and solved problems myself. Even though I haven't coded in a decade, because vibe coding has made things so much easier. And so literally I was like, hey, computer, you made this mistake, go fix that. Didn't write a single line of code. And I was able to like empathize with my customer who's a contributor and figure out how they do it. Okay, that's a little bit of a digression. Now, getting back to your point, like, what does it teach me about how PMs should work with AI systems? I'd say, firstly, Reforge has done a very good job of conveying this, but basically, like you have to learn by doing. If you want to learn by looking or seeing or reading, it's just not going to get you there for two reasons. One is the capabilities of the technology are changing day by day, and it's only by actually using them that you understand where the frontier is today. And then second is because things are changing so quickly, you actually can't see that far ahead. So it's kind of like fog of war. And so by doing, you actually learn more. And then using that information, you can do more. But the whole loop starts with doing, and that gets you more information to refine where you go next. And so I think it's even more important to be like action oriented than theoretical than it might have been in the past. The second thing, I'll repeat the dogfooding angle. Use your product, use your product, use your product. Your product is now undeterministic. It used to be deterministic. And so you have no idea what tiny change is going to break it, but if you figure that out, you've really saved your end user a lot of time. And then finally, I would say every time you try and do something, either try to start it with AI or at least end it with AI, but put it in that process, and then that teaches you, how you can use it effectively for the next time. So for me, I was using AI to, think about what to tell on this podcast, and it worked pretty well. It was very interesting. Probably a lot of good training data around, you said, like product managers and what they think around AI. But on the flip side, I tried to use the same AI to write my self-review at scale. I spent like 3 hours giving it access to every company doc or competencies, all my PRDs and tickets, and it didn't do a great job. It took me like 5, 6 hours to, have the AI interview me and get me there. But it eventually got me to a really good output, which was more like outcome driven and quantitative than I might have actually had. But that's just what I'm doing is like with everything I do, I try and embed AI in the task. And sometimes it one shots and it saves me 2 hours. Sometimes it takes me 2 hours longer. But those are the trade-offs I am willing to live with to learn what I need to learn.
Last question around AI. So when we zoom out and we look at I guess what trends are you most bullish on that will affect PMs everywhere, let's say over the next 5 years? So
5 years, I think a very, very long time horizon in this space. So maybe I'll start with like the next 18 months and then we can like see what the next 5 years look like. I think it's just really hard to actually predict that. So the first thing I'd say is like eval-driven development that we talked about a few minutes ago. I think it is really going to take off and become the norm. And so it's great for like PMs to be on the forefront of that rather than on the tail end of that. The second is 2026 is supposed to be the year of agents. We thought 2025 would be the year of agents. It didn't happen, but it probably will happen in 2026. We'll see. But one of the things folks should keep an eye on is the problem has been that agents do very good at like 1 hour tasks, but long horizon tasks that take a day, 2 days, or 3 days are much harder for it to do. But every 7 months, it is doubling the horizon of time that it can handle. And so right now, AI can do things that would take a month. In 2 years from now, it's going to be, what is it, 2, 4, 8 times that. And it's going to be like a very different world. And so, keep an eye on that. It's going to sneak up on all of us. I think there's a lot of like more simple and obvious things that are going to happen. I think AI is going to be very multimodal. And so, like today, I was using Gemini to update my slides. And on the one hand, it did an amazing job making my slides a lot more visual. On the other hand, it creates slides by creating images that I can't edit, but it's still like a very valuable tool. And I think like the most obvious thing is given how much development times are now like compressed by I think you have I think engineering teams have the ability to both test more variants of things because it's so like easy to go build it. But also like try different approaches when you go build things. And so yeah, I just think like development cost going down really does simplify things. One of the things I really, um, struggle to forecast with AI is like where is AI going to take over and where is human touch going to be valued? And so an interesting stat I saw the other day is 5% of all time on Spotify is people listening to like AI generated music. And then there's soon know another AI app where people are intentionally listening to AI generated music. And it's like, I thought music would be a very human thing. I think going forward, roles like being a caregiver or a therapist might be more human capable than AI capable. But like, I think that's the $1 million question everyone's trying to ask themselves, right? What are humans uniquely good at? What are computers uniquely good at? And for the foreseeable future, you're probably looking at a human in the loop hybrid solution for a lot of different problems. I think our friends at Google and Meta are already like highly personalizing the content and creatives. And so to your point, I've seen that on like the marketing ad side, but I imagine eventually that level of personalization will actually come into the product also.
Thank you for sharing that. We'll talk a bit more about some other aspects. So one topic we talked about discussing was creating time for innovation and creativity. And something PMs have been often talking about that, hey, I'm just so busy, but I don't know. So you founded multiple startups while leading high-stakes product orgs. Now, most PMs can't find time to think, let alone build side projects. How do you do that?
First, I would like to acknowledge exactly what you said. Like being a PM can be a very busy job. But also like no matter how much work you do, I can list like 10 more things you could do. And so, there's, it never ends and you kind of have to decide where you actually go and put that cut line. And I totally agree. It takes a lot of time in meetings, which is probably the most exhausting part of my job. And so I try and make sure that every day I have at least 2 hours of non-meeting time just to stay sane, not for anything else. Like if I use my mind for 5 days a week just for meetings, I am not in a good state to actually like do other things. And so I want to acknowledge that it's hard for PMs, especially if you're managing multiple teams with different stakeholders and goals. I get that it takes you time to be in meetings, to drive alignment, to write documents. And so, yes, that is hard. I fully agree. But if you want to be successful, focus on your health. That's the foundation for everything else. Get good sleep. Make sure that you're in a good mental state to actually be able to do these things. Then I would say it's really important to just like start small. So don't be like, oh, I have to build this like brand new product over the weekend and go launch it. Like that just gets a little overwhelming. So start as small as you can. If you have a friend who's willing to join you for vibe coding, it's actually a really good like collaborative experience. And I would say, the first thing every PM should be doing is dog fooding all their competitor products, right? And so you should order, if you're in fintech, you should have like 30 different debit cards from each bank and you should be playing with that. And then the next step becomes like, how do you insert AI into some of that, like that process? So, for example, I'll ask AI to do a competitive landscape review and then I'll compare it to my actual experience and it'll be like, okay, now I know what it does well and what I can trust it with next time and what I don't do next time. Um, and then I would say like the next step is actually finding like side projects that you would enjoy using and actually enjoy the experience. Even if you don't like finish the book or get to the end of project and ship it, it doesn't mean that you actually didn't learn anything. And so I think anytime I spend outside like producing core execution artifacts for my job, anytime that I spend outside of that, I want to make sure like some of it is aligned with my interests and curiosities, whether that's with my reading material or what I do with AIs. I'd say like, yeah, I think the hard part here is like, make sure you're taking care of your health. Don't feel guilty making time for this, and then start small. follow your interest, and don't be worried about it being like very productive in the short term.
I also want to like maybe help break it down to like, hey, somebody who's new, who's like, oh, there's so much going on. What should I start with? And somebody like an hour a week, 2 hours a week. What should they do?
An hour to 2 hours a week is plenty to get started. So I think that's a realistic and very effective way to start. I'd say maybe go with like 3 steps. So the first step is today, Shobit, just go watch 2 YouTube videos about someone vibe coding something that you found interesting. Ideally, you can sit at your computer and watch it, but if not, like put it on your headset, play YouTube in your ears, go on a walk, but just observe someone else's experience actually working with the AI tools to create this. Once you've done that, maybe next week you spend an hour to an hour and a half actually emulating one of those videos and building the process. And then after you've done both of those, then you can spend your time brainstorming and breaking your product, your idea into different chunks, and only do like 2 hours a week to get there. But to your point, I think the key is start simple, and there's no shortage of content on YouTube. Just search for like vibe coding app idea X using AI, and then pick one of those videos that's highly rated.
Yeah, good. Start small. 2 hours a week. Anybody can make that, and you can multitask. So you're building tools that rewrite news in your tone, automate gifting, and more. Like these projects, how do they help you as a product manager?
Sometimes they do help me, sometimes they don't. And I often don't know what case it is when I'm actually investing in it. It's just like serendipity. So I love that the name of your podcast is Intentional Product Manager, right? And so let's say you're working like 55 hours a week. I'm totally making up that number. You're probably very intentional about how you spend 50 of those hours. It's like these meetings are going to get done, these PRDs are going to be written, these decisions have to be made, and you work top down that checklist, and that's great, but it is kind of exhausting. And so if you want to be motivated and this is your side project and learning, it actually needs to be a little bit of fun. And so don't always make it so goal oriented. What's the famous saying? Like the difference between what I like to do and what I have to do is just like, do I have to do it? And that's why it's like going to the gym is work, but going on a hike is fun. So I think it's important to like actually like follow your interests and not be too worried about the gains in the short term. Dots are only obvious in hindsight. Like I always benefit from these like years or months later that I didn't know. And so I would say just like create some space to have curiosity and passion and enjoy yourself should probably be your primary goal. And so to give you a couple examples, I have some people in my life who are great at gift giving. And so I wanted to reciprocate. And that's what I created like the automated gifting system for myself. It's like, hey, here's the occasion. Here's all these details about my sister. Recommend a gift. And once I choose one, automatically order that gift to her with gift packaging with some sort of a personalized note. And then the aspirational version of that feature is if I can actually videotape my sister receiving the gift, then you have feedback to feed back into the model in the future. And so that was like the idea I started with. We haven't gone to the feedback part, but like, yeah, that was just a tool to help me with gift giving. And yeah, similar things on the news front. I built that myself to like make sure I'm learning about topics and being aware of like the bias that might be introduced by different news sources. So I think both of these examples were things that I thought would benefit me, and I'm not convinced either of them would be like $1 billion business or anything like that.
Love it, and love like how practical they are. And like, hey, here's a problem I have, I'll go solve it. Let's talk about our stakeholder alignment, but have a unique take on stakeholder alignment through vision. And I think you mentioned you see them as very deeply related. So how did you come to that realization?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think most PMs spend a lot of time in stakeholder alignment. And what that usually means is a mix of one-on-one meetings with stakeholders that are very well documented because you have so many stakeholders and you won't remember all the things that you did with them. And then being responsive on Slack and following up with them. And it's a full-time job all by itself that everyone needs to go do well. One of the things I like to think of is how can a PM really add value to an organization? And so first thing I would say is that the PM doesn't need to come up with all the great ideas. As long as you create a truth-seeking team where people feel comfortable contributing ideas and you create an environment to pick the best idea, you've already added a lot of value. One of the other things that I don't think people appreciate is how motivating to the team a grand vision could be. And this could be anything as simple as Sam Altman talks about how it's easier to get someone to solve a massively challenging problem than a medium hard problem because you're actually like motivated by the difficulty of the situation. And I think of it somewhat similarly. Like I think if I'm able to paint this end state vision that our users are very happy, we'll make a lot of money with it. I would hope that the engineers on my team are then motivated by that vision. And even if they work on something really small, they understand how it contributes to that bigger vision. And they don't feel like they're just doing like backfill scripts or something super tactical. And so that's where I feel like having a clear vision drives alignment. And so if you have multiple different teams, hopefully they're building in the same direction, but it also drives clarity and motivation more than anything else. And that's why I encourage every PM, like I know you have to write your PRDs and make sure Eng is unblocked. But if you're able to make time to author what like a good 1 to 2 page vision looks like, and circulate with that team, I think it's very beneficial as a product manager. Let's take an example from Scale. So like I was telling you, Scale has a variety of different projects that we work on, and the output from each of these projects is some sort of data that we sell to model makers. As part of making these projects, we have a whole bunch of contributors that are actually doing tasks, and then we have some people actually reviewing those tasks. And so one of the problems that we've been trying to solve is like, hey, how do we create a world where our contributors who are entering the data feel like the job isn't lonely and feels like they're actually getting better at the job time over time? And it's like, okay, that's good. Those are good goals to aim for. And so we were able to go back and create this amazing vision that talked about how we will invest in community, how we will highlight specific contributors that do really good jobs, but also we wanted to incentivize reviewers to send constructive feedback to the actual people doing the work. And so we created an agent that would actually create this feedback, and then the reviewer just has to tweak it a little bit, and that reduces the friction or the effort that the reviewer needs to do to actually create constructive feedback back for the contributor. And so that's an example where we created this vision where users feel like if this is their primary job, they still have a work community that they trust, they're getting feedback and growing over time, and they have predictable earnings. And so we kind of started a division of how do we want the user to feel, and then kind of found like what features we could build to align with it, which is, a top-down way of thinking rather than a bottoms-up way of, here's some cool technology, what can I do with it? You want to do both, but I think as a PM, you need to do the top-down part for sure.
I'm going to now ask you some questions, just reflecting on your career and learn so that other PMs can learn from your career. Maybe like what's a mistake that you made as a product manager that now you see other people make?
That list is very, very, very long. So let's start with like the top 5. For the first one, I already talked about like pay attention to your health. If you don't have your health, you're not going to work effectively. Relationships are going to get hurt. Like that should be table stakes. The next level of health is like create boundaries at work that actually make sense for you. And so an example is I would always be on Slack, and I would want to be like the first person to respond to a message no matter when it shows up. And I wanted to be like responsive and agile and moving quickly. And I don't think that served me well at all. I think as a product manager, it's great to actually have focused time to think without distractions. And your job is to create a plan to get to the end state, not like a chaotic all hands on deck experience that gets you there. You can actually like aim there and get there over time. And so first thing I want to do is tell PMs, be comfortable setting boundaries, figure out like what distractions are not serving you. And if your manager doesn't help you like set those boundaries, then they're not actually helping you succeed. The second thing is not writing enough. So I think writing is a very important way to distribute information within the organization and have impact. And you can probably like talk to 5 people a day, but you can have like 200 people a day reading your documents. But the reason I bring this up is use documents for 2 reasons, both to communicate ideas, but also for thinking. Like feel free to like write your thoughts and your logic and iterate in them over time. it's much more effective than keeping everything in your head. So I'd say those are the top two. Some of the other things that I'll list is speed isn't everything. If anything, I think Shreyas Doshi has a very good framework where, all the things you do, put them in one of three buckets: leverage, neutral, or overhead. If it's leverage, make time, write that PRD, write that vision doc. If it's neutral, get it done quickly. If it's overhead, try and delegate it or don't do it at all. Um, I would say those are probably like the big ones. And then I think the last one I'd say is like, as a PM, be comfortable pushing back, be comfortable being wrong. You're not going to be a valuable contributor if you only stay in your room of competency and focus there. Just feel free to like throw hypotheses out there and refine them with data. And that probably applies not just to product managers, but like many, many other roles.
Now let's talk about the other side. So now you're coaching PMs, you're mentoring PMs, you've done that for a while. What separates someone who's good from somebody who's like undeniably great, amazing, top class?
I'm going to answer this, but I actually want to hear your answer after this show, but I'm really curious. You've obviously talked to a lot of product managers, both in the interview process and beyond. But yeah, like when I think about mentoring PMs, the first thing I try and tell them is like, simplify things as much as possible. I think a lot of us feel like if we have something very complicated, it proves we're smart. Or there's no room for intuition. You need to prove everything is accurate with data, which is nice to do, but you can't always do. And I'd say, like, in both of those, feel free to simplify, tell a very simple story. Of what your logic is, see if people buy into that story. If there are data analyses to do, go back and do that. But as a PM, you are going to get a lot more credit for simplifying things that people can understand than you are going to get for solving some complex problem in a very complex way. Second thing, boundaries again, create thinking time. You're not going to have time to write the great doc or do the thinking if you're always responding to the Slack and just like following up on every task people give you. The third is, and you've seen this a lot probably in AI related topics, which is now that AIs are so good at building products, PMs need to invest in taste and judgment. And when I think about taste and judgment, the two things that are going to get you to taste and judgment are A, spending as much time with their users as possible. There's no amount of time that you spend with your users that's too much. Like spend more time with your users. It's more valuable than anything else. And then you build judgment by basically also using your competitor products, understanding, what your competitors do well and don't, and how you can differentiate there. And then I'd say like the last thing PMs do well is stakeholder management, tied in with your product thinking. So like, yeah, you have a vision, now you have a roadmap. Make sure that the roadmap aligns with the incentives of all the people that need to contribute to it. And if they don't, then you need to find ways to actually create incentives for them. But yeah, Shobit, what have you found to be some of the like major differentiators between the two?
I'm going to try to not repeat and just like do some other ones. So one is they're very persistent communicators. And by that, what I mean is they're going to learn how to say the same thing over and over again in different ways. By the time other people get it, they're bored of it. And if they get bored too soon, like that message never seeps into the organization. So I think that's a very important one. I think they are patient for change, especially in larger organizations. Like, for example, this is one of my former managers. She was amazing at, hey, we need to be more data driven. And she would like stick through that change for a year until it finally happened. And it took a lot of effort, but like, I'm like, cool, that's great. I think the last thing I would say is they have a good understanding of how people really behave versus how they say they will behave. And like, that's both important from a user perspective and a stakeholder, engineers, teammates perspective. They're just very curious about what people actually do versus what they say they will do. I think that's a very important thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Last main question, then we'll wrap up with a couple of fun ones. Let's say somebody wants to break into Gen AI. What's a skill they should master right now?
Great question. Let me answer this in a couple ways. So first thing I would say is before you break in, actually make sure this is something that you want to do because breaking in will take a lot of effort. I spent a lot of time. I went to business school to break into consulting and investment banking, and I absolutely hated both of those because I'm a builder, and so I'm back here. So anything you can do to like simulate what the job would be like would be great, and then we can actually answer your question of like how do you break in. Um, Now, talking about breaking in, I would love to hear your perspective on this too, show a bit. But in my mind, like interviewing well and breaking in versus being good at the job are two very, very different things. You can be a great interviewer and offer employee, or the other way around. And so, since you're talking about breaking in, like let's talk about like how do you like get yourself into that interview process? Um, it's a very competitive market. PM is always in a competitive market. AI PM is an even more competitive market. But there are a lot of roles out there. OpenAI, Anthropic are hiring like no other in large volumes, and then there's like thousands of AI apps there that you could go work with. So there are a lot of opportunities that you can take after. I feel like technology has broken LinkedIn and online dating, and so what I mean by that is if Shobit is a recruiter and he opens a new role, there will be like 5,000 resumes in 3 minutes because all these other people have written agents. And so the whole like drop in resume process is completely useless. And most recruiters are just reaching out directly to people. And so when you put that all together, I'd say if you want to break into AI PM now, my tips are always find a human connection into that company, whether it's a friend of a friend who can refer you, or you talk to someone in HR, like find a way to get in front of that line. Dropping your resume is not going to help at all. The second is when you actually talk to people, you want to come across as excited by this opportunity, and you can't feign that excitement. That excitement comes from actually playing with the capabilities of the tools and actually being excited about them. And then finally, if you've actually managed to make time to build tools of your own and side projects of your own, then you have like relevant tidbits and stories and frustrations with current tools that you can start sharing with people. Now that's an organic dialogue that can build upon. And so I would say like those are the three things I would focus on. I assume that an interview for a PM at an AI company is no different than a traditional PM interview. You're still focused on business sense and product sense and analytics. Like none of that really changes. And so that would be my advice. Be good at all of those PM interviewing skills, but those are the things that I would do to break in. But yes, would love your thoughts on this because it's very hard for people to break into a product or especially AI product.
I'll just like sort of pick a thought you had and just add to it. Like, so you talked about how LinkedIn is broken, how the online application system's broken.
Because there's too little friction on the supply side. There used to be friction and now there isn't. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the advice I get even like when it comes to marketing my business. They're like, everyone's generating content from AI and posting it everywhere. So how can you be more human? And it's you zig when everybody else is zagging. So it's a very similar approach. Like, what can you do that makes you come across as a very competitive human during the process? Whether it's direct outreach, whether it's building something small, whether it's pitching in a different way. Like that, I think is going to be the big thing. And then once you're through the interview process, I think it matters a lot. Like all the basics have to be right, but the hard part is actually now getting the interview in some sense. That is the part that I totally agree with you, just adding on top of that. Mick, this has been amazing. I'm going to ask you just a couple of fun questions to wrap up our conversation. What's the last book that you read and loved?
Actually, I might even give you three answers. So if you're focused on your career and like how to align stakeholders and how to like get recognition without being boastful or like an annoying person, I find Rise, RISE, to be a very good book on how to like manage yourself and your brand in an authentic way. The second book I'll say was super interesting is They Called Us Exceptional, which is a book by this Indian girl about how Indians are a model minority and what challenges are encountered with facing that. I thought it was a very unique book. And then the reason I wanted to give three is right now, a lot of my reading is sci-fi. I wanted to be not productive, so I'm actually interested in things. Three Body Problems, probably my favorite book of series of all time. And then I don't know if you've heard of Children of Time. It's also a trilogy. Highly recommend reading Children of Time. Very interesting.
And then if you weren't in product, what would you be doing?
I think my dream job, if anyone would pay me for this, would either be being like a cricket podcaster. I love watching cricket. It's not the fastest paced game. I get why someone might not be interested in it, but I've grown up watching the sport. I love it. There's this guy called Jared Kimber who's like the stats guy, and all the teams reach out to him to basically do like Moneyball for cricket, and he has his own podcast. Like that would be a super cool job. Intellectually challenging, meets my passions. I get to meet the players. That would be a dream. And if they wouldn't let me in there, then I would like to be a DJ. I love electronic dance music, trap house, Hugo is some of my favorite music now. Yeah, I don't know anything about DJing, but it seems like a very enjoyable job.
My last question, where can people learn from you, follow you, connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I find it really easy to DM me on X or at least follow me at Mick Gupta. And also feel free to email me. I read and respond to all of my emails. Mick Gupta, M is in Michigan, ICKGUPTA, Gmail. Don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to chat async or find time together. Yeah, I'd love to meet more of your listeners.
We'll be sure to put that in our show notes as well so that they have easy access to it. Thank you again. This was super valuable. I learned a lot. I know this is going to be a highly replayed episode to catch all the different gems that you dropped here. So just want to thank you for spending time.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be back anytime.
Thank you. And then to everyone listening, remember, product leadership is not just about execution. It's about vision, influence, and being intentional. So if you like this episode, just do me a favor and share it with somebody who you think will benefit from it. Thank you again, Mick, and all of you, stay intentional. Hey, be sure to check out our website at intentionalproductmanager.com to see how you can level up in your career.